And we're live. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. So we're going to talk about Ballaghaderreen. Most of you have probably seen it. There was a big incident happened in the town. I suppose I'll just get straight into it. Let's talk about Ballaghaderreen the last few days. So, yeah. Well, I'll wait for an old sound check first. Give me a sound check. Say hello in the chat. Welcome, everybody. I hope my internet doesn't totally bail out on me here, as it usually kind of does. So I want to, how do I get into it? How do I begin? So let's just talk about the immediate details first, right? So this was on Friday, I think it was, as far as I know. So a child was seriously assaulted in Ballaghaderreen overnight. This is from Shannonside News. It happened happened in the main street just after midnight, and Garda investigations are ongoing. An area of the town centre was sealed off that following morning for Garda examination. So I'll have to be, the state is getting really touchy about people talking about stuff effectively now. They're floating more and more hate speech legislation and effectively waging a war on even speculation or talking about stuff, or even when things are confirmed, talking about the malinformation, misinformation, spreading fear and hate, all this kind of stuff, right? So we're in a totalitarian situation. So I will parse my words a little bit in the sense of allegedly this, that, and the other, right? Now that is from mainstream media, from the guards, that there was an incident. Now, behind the scenes, the rumors and the word on the street is that allegedly a 15-year-old boy was sexually assaulted, raped, gang raped. These are not great words for YouTube probably, but by and that this boy was perhaps a traveler boy, I'm not sure, and perhaps the perpetrators were migrants, perhaps Roma, Gypsy migrants, or Syrians, something of that description. These are all allegations that go around, but they're pretty strong allegations in the sense that it's heavily circulating, and I haven't heard anyone really refute it. No one in Ballaghaderreen has really refuted it, and it's drawn out a huge demonstration in Ballaghaderreen, which has been heavily affected by unwanted mass immigration, state forced. So you kind of put all that together, all the people showing up in Ballaghaderreen, they didn't all show up for nothing. You know what I mean? If these allegations are spurious, actually it was just two guys had words with each other outside a bar, and it spiraled in Chinese whispers into it. Well, why would all those people be out? They live in the town. They're close to the situation. So it seems pretty strong. But anyway, that's the story. Allegedly, young boy gang raped by migrants. That's the alleged story, and the official story is that there was a big incident. They're not saying too much. So that's the crack. Now I'll get into a little bit more here. There was this is more sort of in the way of allegations or alleged. This was just posted around on the internet. Video of 40 Irish travellers in Ballaghaderreen looking for the Romas who attacked a minor. I don't think this has been refuted. There were official reports as well that there were 40 masked men roaming around Ballaghaderreen that caused damage to two properties, dispersed when the guards showed up, etc. So it seems to be that this is the case. One would be prone to speculate that this is travellers perhaps going out in the town in their balaclavas looking for culprits, etc. So basically you have a shit show, a classically Ballaghaderreen shit show nightmare. And of course, to this boy who suffered this alleged attack, obviously it's horrific, life-changing, terrible. Needless to say, that kind of stuff obviously goes without saying. But just speaking about it politically, it's a classically Ballaghaderreen story, and I kind of want to tell you a little bit, like my experience. Ballaghaderreen has a special place for me a little bit, because when I first got into this stuff about the asylum industry and all of that in 2017, I think there were various Ruskis and Lister Varnas and all that. The thing that got me into that was seeing stories from Ballaghaderreen at the time. I think it was in 2017 that they had an asylum centre forced on them. Sorry, I'll just lower my screen there. An asylum centre forced on them, and I was reading reports of the community integration, and there were some people were concerned about services, and there was a meeting, but everyone agreed that we'll all pitch in together, and it's going to be a wonderful thing, even though we wish we were consulted more, all that. And I was reading it thinking that smells like absolute bullshit to me. And so it was that reporting that I was reading as from a consumer level that inspired me when the Lisdoonvarna thing was going on to say, I'm just going to pack my bag here and head to Lisdoonvarna myself. I want to see one, because there was a meeting to be held. I was like, I want to go to the meeting myself and suss it out. And sure enough, I found all of the rats in the building, and everything went from there. But it was Ballaghaderreen was one of the openers on this. And so they have had many iterations of refugees and migrants. They've been inundated. I think about half the population at this point is foreign born. I think it was 40% in 2022. And that's 2022. A couple of years have passed since then. There's been there's been massive immigration in Ireland in the last 2 years, unprecedented, basically, especially with asylum spoofers. And of course, these numbers are always undercounted too, because you can have a house full of, 15 Roma living in it, borderline, nobody knows who's there, what's going on. They're less likely to fill out the census than Mary McGee up the road or whatever. So I think it's safe to say Ballaghaderreen is probably minority Irish at this point. And the Irish people who are there are probably disproportionately elderly and old. So effectively the vital young population of Ballaghaderreen, if you split it that way, is likely to be heavily majority foreign. This all occurring over, the course of a decade or two maximum. No one ever asked, complaints never listened to, all the rest of it. Now, Ballaghaderreen, for those who don't know, County Roscommon, Ireland, it's kind of like, I've never been to Ohio, but when people talk about, kind of, the non-coastal America, Ballaghaderreen and Roscommon would very much be that. High unemployment. I'm sure it's nice in its own way, Ballaghaderreen and Roscommon and all that. Of course it is, but you would have a bit of unemployment, immigration, drug use, and the rest of it, right? So it's a bit of a beat up town. A lot of the industry left. I think in 2016 their unemployment rate was 4 times the national average, etc. And then they bring the population, or the plantation population replacement, in on top of that, and sort of fill up the vacant nature of the town with these migrants, etc. So that's Ballaghaderreen. That's the story as far as I think hopefully I've brought you up to speed on that. It's one of the flagship towns in Ireland, along with Ballyhonus and a few others, for sort of left behind town in the periphery of the country, socially, culturally, geographically, all that, and just hit hard with social, like state engineered population replacement, effectively. Now, I'm looking for the video. The one. So anyway, this was the drama today. They had a lot of people saying, "Great to see me back. Thanks very much." Sometimes I come and I go, and I don't even intend to. I just kind of go off on my own thing for a while, but no particular reason. So anyway, after this this boy was attacked in whatever fashion, there were, of course, the whole thing is freezing up. But while I'm waiting for that, I'll explain it. So after this happened, there was obviously outrage in the town behind the scenes, quietly, people speaking to each other privately. Huge outrage, because of course it's bubbling over there anyway because of immigration. And so something like this happens, it just blows the lid off a little bit. And so a demonstration was planned for this evening, 5 p.m. To march, kind of vague, Ballaghaderreen concerned citizens marching in protest of crime, or something generic thing like that. But these things, you never know which way they're going to go, or how it's going to manifest. And what we had was Philip Dwyer, friend and fellow sort of nationalist in Ireland, Philip Dwyer, went down there to cover it, and he knows the crack as well as any of us do, or better. and he got there. I suppose the video will speak for itself. Perhaps I'll just give you a prelude as well. He effectively, the speaker got going, and then Phil interrupted him with a sort of a heckling kind of question. I think the man said, "Crime is on the rise" or something, and Phil said, "Why is it on the rise?" Something along those lines, right? And the guy rounded on him, and the town followed it like sheep, basically. But there's loads more to it than that. But let's have a look at it. I'm sure most of you have seen it already.
I'm answerable to nobody. I'm a member of this community. I have been all my life in this town. I'm 30 years working in community development around this town, okay?
It's a question.
So you'll have your chance. You're a mouthpiece and we know you, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We are people in this town. We will stand together as people in this town, not people that come in and infiltrate our town. So the best thing you can do now is if you don't have the positive thing, move on. Because we know you're the length and breadth of the country going around stirring hatred and all that.
It's a question.
Ballaghaderreen will stand together as they always have done. And they won't have to
It's a simple question. No. Who's going to move me?
You have no relationship with this town.
Who's
You just come in and you just want to stir stuff and feel it around here. Excuse me.
Can you address the issues, please? Can you address the issues? What's affecting this town? Please, can you address the issues? Okay.
Now we are people, and we are a community in this town. We're a very, very tight community in this town. We work together. We might fall out over football, we might fall out over politics.
Right. Okay. So, see, every command I give my computer here, it's about 5 seconds behind because the usual. So bear with me. But one of the things that sort of crossed my mind when I was watching it live. Oh, it's all frozen up. But one of the things that occurred to me while I was watching it is when Phil first interrupted. See, I have a different temperament to Phil, and when he first interrupted, I kind of, it's not that I agreed with the crowd or thought he had done a terrible thing or whatever, but I know Phil is a bombastic, very forward type of guy, no bullshit. And so, I would be thinking, don't kind of don't get on the wrong side of it. It's very easy for them to sort of take the upper hand over you by painting you as like a difficult personality. It's it's not about the politics. It's just that you're being difficult. You're heckling when it's not time for heckling and all that kind of stuff, right? And my thing would be to go quietly and kind of observe the whole thing and not interrupt and not cause a fuss. Definitely don't get made the bad guy on the spot. But actually, it's one of these cases where Phil once again is kind of right, I think, where. And I realized this about 30 seconds into it as I'm watching the drama, is that what he effectively did was necessary in a sense. And that's how his personality lends itself extremely well to situations like this. Because if you're trying to be Mr. Proper and play everything right and play the room and all that, you would never overcome the level of social control that's going on there and political control. And I'll get into all that in a minute. But you sort of fall into the trap and you become a victim of it and it just plays out. Whereas what Phil did was, in a situation like that, he took the heat in the moment because it doesn't feel very nice to have people kind of jeer against you and all that. But actually, it was very important because that's a minor thing. Okay, yeah, you have a couple of dozen people jeering you. But what you're showing the broader audience is what's really going on. And the way I think about it is you're drawing the poison out, or kicking the hornet's nest in a way. And most of the people there who jeered at him, they have no idea what they're doing. The fact is, with respect, if you were there and you had sort of the political capital, like you're leading, or even some random person who gets up, they don't even know, but they end up being the MC, the ringleader of this kind of little meeting, and they said, we've had it for too long, too many foreigners coming in, blah 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 blah, we're foreigners on our own streets and this is enough, it's the last straw and all this. And I'm not advocating for this, I don't want this, we'll say, but the same crowd could be torch and pitchfork with it in a different environment. And again, I'm not saying that's what I want or whatever. I'm just saying that the crowd is fickle. The crowd and the mob is always extremely fickle. And it's a question of who is leading it, who's pulling the strings, who's setting the tone, all of that. That's just the nature of a random crowd meeting in a community as such. And so it's not so much about the people that cheered, because in a different context, cheer for the exact opposite. If Phil had sort of control of the stage, or someone like Phil, and it could be the total opposite way around. So the question is, how is it being led and what's going on there? And I have the kind of receipts on this guy. I mean, like, so get into that. No, we'll get into who this guy is in a second, but I had just some basic, some basic points. Like one is I don't know if you could hear in the video, but the guy's talking about, oh, it's not political, or don't be political, don't be bringing your agenda in, and this kind of stuff. I.e., you're saying mass immigration is bad and the town's been overrun, but that's bringing politics into it. We, as a tight-knit community, we're handling it just fine. We don't want outsiders like you. The first point, which I've made before, is it's funny how quickly you transition from these so-called community leaders who have hundreds or whatever of these migrants planted into their town against everyone's wishes, and they say, oh, well, we're just going to have to grin and bear it, and we're just going to have to make the best of it and integrate and have Mohammed bake cookies for the disabled kids for RTE to take a video of, and we'll go through the motions and all that, and we'll hand the GA Club 20 grand funding here, and we'll play it all out. You all know how it works. But so 1 minute they're saying, well, nobody has a veto on who lives in their community, even if it's 300 people being brought in on a bus or whatever. And even we didn't want them brought in, but they're brought in now. And I suppose we live in such a cuddly liberal democracy, we're actually going to have to invite them to the GA Club and baking cookies and all this stuff. Because we're such a hardcore liberal democracy, we cannot exclude, we cannot pull up drawbridges, we can't distinguish between us and them, none of that. That's the liberal democratic mantra. But then when they want to keep control of an event to the state narrative, suddenly then it becomes perfectly permissible for them to kind of have this pitchforks attitude where they say, you're not welcome in this town, you're not from this town, you get out of here, we're going to run you, and this kind of stuff. So they go from, again, Swedish liberal democratic whatever mode to medieval Europe, to like, you're not from this town, about someone who's from Dublin or wherever else. And I wouldn't mind if that was their mentality, if they carried that through across the board, right? If you said, okay, well, if 500 migrants come into your town on a bus, you're going to pull up the drawbridge, get the pitchforks out, and you're going to say, this is our town, you're not from here, you're not one of us. Okay, well, at least you're consistent, right? Fine. So if someone comes down, shaking things up a little bit politically, then you can kick them out too, and that's just what you do. But it's not. You're obviously rolling out the red carpet for diversity and more migrants and integration and all of this, and gay rights, blah blah blah, you name it. It's all about people are welcome, and we have, again, the liberal democratic idea of dissent and the rest of it. Well, someone can dissent. Oh, so what if this person is a trans activist against the wishes of the whole town, and they're trying to lobby for all the cafes to have a flag on them, or they'll get targeted by the media? Well, look, that person's just doing their thing, and it's a free country, people can do whatever they want. But then Phil comes down and asks the wrong question, pokes the bear a little bit, and they turn into, not all of them, but some of them, and this guy as well. Did you notice he was frothing at the mouth, basically? He was getting into like dictator mode, like his arm was starting to almost fly up in the air, sort of thing, dramatically, in a 1930s type of fashion. He was being possessed by like the ghost of some famous character from the 1930s or whatever, hardcore, right? But then the next minute, of course, if he's talking about migrants, well, it's all passé. It's all just whatever, it's mild criticism is what I'm trying to say. But then he's a fucking firebrand when he's on the stage, and he spots Phil and he decides, do you know what? I have the crowd enough in my pocket here. And he's interjected, so he's kind of comes across maybe a bit rude on the spot. So I have him now, and I'm going to make this big fiery speech. I just thought that was so weak. But other questions. I have notes. It's my, I haven't streamed in a while, so I need to do this. The thing of no politics in the town as well is that, and I'll get into the guy's backstory, but as we know with all these towns, they have so many integration NGOs and integration funds, and one after another. You could spend hours outlining this stuff, right? But they have so much of that in a town. The Ballaghaderreen says welcome, la 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 la, 50,000 from the state here, whatever, you can't just take someone who's against migration and anti-immigration and claim that they're being political. That's an asymmetrical thing. Well, because it's like, no, you're not saying, you don't have a neutral town where on one end there's no pro-migration institutionalized agenda and political machine, and then like that's immigration stuff, that's political. I'm being political into a vacuum, a hitherto vacuum. It's like, it's not a vacuum. This town is up to its eyeballs in politicized, funded, heavily mapped out integration organizations and diversity and all that. And the other thing, of you fuckers, right? A selection of 10 of the people at the top, these kind of little political schemers like this fella, Micheál Frayn. How many of you are being paid? Full disclosure, tell me how much you're being paid. Tell me how much clout and influence and political capital does it gain you? Like, you have a vested interest and it's tied up in this integration thing. Even in opposing it, you're sort of getting your clout by being seen to oppose it in certain ways. And you're getting money from the state. So it's already politicized. You're all politicized. So, it's kind of like, don't give me that. The other one too is that they said, this is a non-political event. So thus you can't bring up opposing migration, which is what everybody and their dog on the street knows that it's about, right? This whole thing. You can't bring that up, even though it's absurd, because we all know that's the issue at hand. You can't bring that up because it's political. We're not being political. We're being calm, and we're being we have decorum here. It's not the time or the place. But then the whole thing is about that they're under-resourced with Gardaí, which is ridiculous, really. That they're under-resourced with Gardaí, and that Drew Harris, when he leaves next year, hopefully that changes when there's a new Garda commissioner, and the town has been totally underserved and ignored by Dublin, and the Gardaí has been ripped out of the town. There's no post office, whatever the merits of those arguments are. So how is it that those aren't political? You're bringing politics. That's a political assertion. We don't have enough guards, this, that, the other. And another political assertion would be the migration thing has gotten out of control, and now we're reaping the fruits of it here, right? So there's no consistency in it. This whole thing of like basically appealing to decorum is what it is. It's this, and it's a very Irish village mentality, right? Where you sort of set the stall in the beginning, you ban what can't be talked about, you very tightly set the agenda of what will be talked about. So we're going to talk about lack of Gardaí and rising crime. That's it. We're not talking about anything else. And that's the proper thing to do. And we're going to march with candles and all of that. And that we're going to be very good boys, right? And if you want to be a good boy like me, you'll do that too. And we'll do the marathon thing. Ballaghaderreen strong. We're going to be dignified about this, right? Or whatever. And then if someone said, well, what's that going to achieve? Then you're in trouble, right? So, oh no, don't be stirring things up. And they create that atmosphere. And of course, all the lemmings run after them and just take it. And any dissenters are marginalized. That's how it works. And they want it. And the appeal, of course, when anybody questions it, the appeal, they don't say, well, no, we can't bring up immigration because you're not allowed. And we have connection to the departments in Dublin. And we're all sort of in on it a little bit. They don't say that. They obviously can't say that. They say it'd be rude, it'd be improper. It's like arriving late for mass. It's not very good. Don't be buchel donna here, that kind of thing. It's that appeal to that bullshit, as always. And of course the result of it is always, so basically I shut up, I put on my high-vis jacket, I hold my candle, I go out, I demand more guards, which has very little logical connection to what happened and to what the real grievance in Ballaghaderreen is. But I'll go along with it for now. and we'll all be very satisfied that we put our high-vis jackets on and went out, and we go home again, turn the television back on. And of course, there will be no more guards. We won't get the guards. We might get one or something, but realistically, we won't get them. And everything will keep going as it is, and that's it. And the political schemers at the top who played both ends of it, that they sort of orchestrated the whole thing for the state by saying, we'll keep a lid on it, we'll keep it the way we want to keep it, for the state. I'll manage it here, right? And then on the other side, say to the town, we're not very happy. I'm going to the government and I'm complaining about this. It's really not right what's happening. And that's the same thing. We saw it in Rosscray, we see it in Ballaghaderreen. There is and I'm not even talking about the leftist NGOs and stuff. They exist. I'm talking about what I describe as sort of super value politics, where it's the classic. If you're not Irish, you won't know what I'm talking about here, but it's the classic super value manager. You know, the kind of fat guy with the shirt and the tie, and he's kind of saying hello to the women after mass, and he's inside in the shop then, and he's connected to the GAA, and saying all the right things to the right kind of people, but has like the eye of a fox, very sharp, very like almost could be ruthless in a way, and it's just this kind of Tammany Hall corrupt sort of control type of thing. And I know it sounds ridiculous. That could sound ridiculous, I understand, but there is this thing in the average mid-sized Irish town where you have the like guards, some of the secondary school principals or whatever. You have some of the solicitors, the super value manager, and of course a lot of them will have fingers in pies, and they're gone beans. They keep control on things. There will be this thing where downstream from them, the average person who's in the GAA or goes to mass or whatever, partakes in the community life of the town. There's this kind of unspoken thing where those are the dons and you don't question them, and they set the tone, and they could have all sorts of nefarious personal agendas and power plays that they're doing. And they really are extremely Machiavellian political operators. And so you might see this fat fella in a super value shirt and a tie, saying hello to all the women coming in and all this kind of stuff, right? But actually behind that fat mask is an extremely calculating political operator, and they know what they're doing. Same with the Gombean politicians and all of that. And that's what you have, is where that is what it is, right? You find that in any human gathering in the world, is this sort of hierarchical thing. The trouble is that the state have in a very sophisticated way developed over decades a way to, in terms of this replacement immigration stuff and the backlash that is inevitable to it, they've developed a way to plug into these people and control them, and control them, work with them, and towns are basically powerless to resist. They don't, like, people don't have it in them to do anything but clap when they're told to clap by these people. That's how it works. But yeah, someone in the chat there says buy out the right people. Yeah, it's effectively buying them out, and sometimes it's instrumentalizing them maybe where they're not even quite aware of it. But certainly and I saw this is kind of tangential, but COVID, I've been reading a bit about COVID recently and how they were trying to encourage uptake of jabs and stuff like that. And I was blown away by the amount of endlessly long papers that were written just in Ireland alone about how to encourage uptake. And they were openly talking about behavioral science and all this kind of stuff. And you wouldn't believe it. You think, how are there enough people with enough time and enough funding to write these things? But apparently there are enough people in colleges and various government departments who have stuff like this worked out to an absolute T, right? And you wouldn't believe me and I don't have the receipts here or whatever, but like, they're not just winging it. They have these dynamics that I'm referring to mapped out, and literally mapped out in behavioral science documents and all this stuff. You don't bring millions of people into a country and know the backlash you're going to face without having the plans worked out, right? So we see the friends of the community. this stuff about get local leftists to form an NGO and all that. But I think far beyond that, it involves what might come across as the more normal ones, the super value manager, the GAA people and all that. They are all mapped out and understood and how to get this all through. And so the way I see it is when you see something like Ballaghaderreen tonight, you were looking at effectively a military, and it's all invisible, basically. You're looking at like a military grade psychological warfare operation, effectively. That is, again, it's invisible. If you were out in the street, you think there are people here attending a vigil, they're angry about this terrible thing that happened. There's a few guys at the top with high-vis vests with the microphone, and I'm sure he's some sort of de facto sort of pillar of the community, and he's speaking, and it is what it is. It is far from that. Under the surface, there's so much going on. You wouldn't believe, you know. But I'll just give you an example of it. So this guy, Michael Frayne, the guy who was having his HIT-LER moment on Phil Dwyer, right, from the podium. So this is from Fianna Fáilt on Telegram. So Michael Frayne has chaired the Roscommon Leader Partnership, a county NGO, for 14 years, managing a yearly budget of 4.2 million. A significant part of this budget goes towards supporting immigration through various programs. Additionally, one of his companies supplies office equipment to both the Leader Partnership and potentially the County Council. Frayne also serves as the secretary for the Ballaghaderreen project, led by Rethink Ireland's former chairman, a project in Ballaghaderreen marred by suspicions of financial mismanagement. He is a board member of the Ballaghaderreen Local Development Company. The list goes on and on. Frayne has led Roscommon's largest state and EU-funded NGO for 14 years and is now being wheeled out as an independent candidate and a harsh critic of lack of services in the county. These are the so-called independents in Ireland. It's time to wise up. So that's a very interesting and detailed post by this Fianna Fáilt on Telegram. But the thing is about this is, like, when I talk about the under the surface stuff, I mean, look, Roscommon Leadership Partnership, SICAP programs, the Rethink Ireland, the Ballaghaderreen project, local development companies. Of course, he's got a finger in all these pies. And what it is to me is like something like The Wire. If you've ever seen The Wire, set in Baltimore, US, it's this kind of, there's crime on the street or whatever, but then as the story goes on, your man goes deeper and deeper and starts to discover that the gang crime, if you're an ordinary cop trying to fight it, you know, collar these people or whatever, is the fact that, like, drug runners or whatever, gangsters, is that when you actually work your way up the chain through the police, the DA, the mayor, all that kind of stuff, and the chief of police, or I don't know if I mentioned that, but, you know, you discover that all these players, they're actually all in on it, effectively. Like the whole thing is one big industry, and the whole thing from The Wire, if you've seen it, is that it's just, the more it goes on, you realize the more it is absolutely rotten to the core, and the whole thing is as intended. It's not, they're not actually trying to fight the crime. They are part of it. It is one big industry. And that's kind of what this stuff is like. So he's up there. The other thing about him is, I noticed this Micheál Frayne guy, I noticed him pop up earlier this year. There was a proposed set of modular homes to be put into Ballaghaderreen for Ukrainian asylum seekers. And the town was livid against it and all of that. And he propped himself up as and this guy is a long-time political schemer. He's been trying to become a councillor for forever, right? So this is a very ambitious little political schemer / super value manager type, right? Or aspiring one. And he rode the sort of story of the Ukrainian thing by going on in the media and to the meetings and all of that, talking about how Ballaghaderreen has been sort of ignored. They were promised services back in 2017 when a bunch of Syrians came in, but it never manifested. And here we go again. And isn't it terrible? And we don't get services and and maybe mild hints at immigration, but nothing too much. Now he was out there. He was on the telly, basically, RT, whatever it's called, all over the place. And of course, sure enough, a couple of months later in the local elections, wouldn't you know, he was elected councillor, because of course he ran on the ticket of I'm your man on this immigration stuff, even though I don't really say it. I kind of put myself out there and say, well, we got the immigrants, we didn't get the services, and that's a disgrace, and la la la. But it's a sort of a mild criticism, safe pair of hands, effectively, for the criticism. Like, that'll be funneled to absolutely nowhere, like all the rest of them. And sure enough, he was elected councillor. Now, you don't just get loads of media coverage and get to go on every radio show. And he's been on multiple articles. If you just Google him, you'll see it. Pops up all the time. The media don't have you on, whether it's Shannon Side and RTE or whatever. They don't have you on repeatedly for years and years and years, unless you are, as he is, involved in the fucking leadership partnership and the county council and the this and that project and Rethink Ireland, whatever. So that's a company man, effectively, is what that is. And of course, they catapulted him into getting his little councillor seat, and here he is now again. The other thing is that just to mention as well, is like the reaction Phil got tonight is that, and you see the same in Ross Cray and elsewhere, is that they have the whole thing so well sewn up that they come across to the community as the guy who is a great man for a pint and getting new corner flags for the GA club, right, or whatever. They come across as that guy on the surface, but of course behind the scenes they're savvy political operators who have more of an eye with the media and the state than they really do with the people. Like, if you said to him, what are you actually going to do to fix this? Like, people don't want this immigration and it's getting worse and worse. What are we actually going to, what does this solution look like? He would, I assume, say more seesaws in the playground, you know, like nothing. He's not actually opposing it at all, realistically. You know, it's a perfect position to put yourself where you're giving a little bit of criticism of what's happening, but you can be trusted by the media, state, and others to just not really do anything, not rally the people properly, if you know. And that's your role. And then you get it from both ends. You get the popular support of the town because they think you're their man, and but you also get invited to Dublin, right? Because you're kind of their man as well. So, and that's what these people do. That's a way of, it's effectively, how would I put it? Sort of milking it from every end and inserting yourself into a slot, a vacant slot where the state are most certainly looking for someone like that. They could not have a politician who comes out and says, I think it's actually brilliant that we bring in, I think we should bring in even more migrants. And I don't care that a boy was attacked. I think diversity is our strength and all that. They can't have someone like that, obviously. They need someone who can be seen to be in opposition in some fashion. I'm opposed to it because we don't have enough seesaws, you know, that kind of thing. And of course, the town then just go, well, this guy seems to have clout in the mainstream media. So that gives him power because he always seems to be on the telly and stuff. So that's our man all sat in front of the telly going, go on, Michal, you're telling it like it is. And that's what happens. And so that's a very valuable position to be in. Lots of power, connection, money, jobs, political capital, all of the rest of it. So that's Michal Frayne. But I mean, what else do I want to say about that? Oh yeah, just on the police thing. If Ballaghaderreen, like, it's one of those things where you kind of go, yes, they should have more police, of course, and they should have a post office and everything else as well. But obviously the problem isn't necessarily the lack of police. The dog on the street knows the problem is immigration and the fact that people in the town are now foreigners in their own town, effectively, right? So you'll have like Afghani and Roma, various type of groups hanging around the town, and like the unspoken thing as well. And I'm not speaking about every one of these groups, generalizing and all that, but the unspoken thing by the state, the thing that they ignore, of course, part of their propaganda is to say, well, Ballaghaderreen aren't racist, are they? We're not racist. None of us would be racist. I'm opposed to it, but I'm not racist. It's just about this and that. No one ever says, well, if there's like 10 Afghanis hanging around outside some takeaway or whatever it is, right, and they're all speaking their language to each other, and there's a bunch of young guys in their like 20s, 30s, And you know, a little old lady goes by them. The question is always, do the Irish people hate those foreigners in this example? But the question is never, do those foreigners hate the Irish? Because maybe they do, maybe they don't, but maybe they do. Can we talk about that? What's the conversation on that? Is there contempt? Is there an attitude of domination? Is this the thing? I mean, we can talk about, are the Irish racist? Do they have hate in their hearts? Do they have apathy to people? Do they have malintent? Let's talk about that. And then let's also talk about, do the foreigners that are being brought in, do they have those attitudes? Can we have an open conversation? No, of course not. It's the crosshairs are always on the Irish people, right? It's always you in the witness box or this on the stand being interrogated, sorry, for the morals in your heart or whatever, never the other groups. And you say, oh, well, that's because you're a majority. Well, when you become a minority in your town, the same standard will still exist, and that's what it is. But that's the real issue. And they're talking about Gardaí. But again, what a bizarre protest. First off, it's a silent protest, and then they're making it all about guards very, very strenuously. It's just about guards. You go, why can't it be about some other stuff? Maybe the real issue. No, we're dead set. It's hardcore. And you go, again, it's the liberal democracy thing. It's like, why are you so scared? Like, why are you trying to control it so much? It was the same with I saw with the Sean Meehan thing in Cashel. They were saying, we can't talk about immigration in this Facebook page. And I find myself going, well, the reason you have to say that is because unpoliced, every comment will be about immigration. And that'll be from people in the town familiar with the situation and stuff. Every comment will be about immigration. The only reason you have to say that we can't make this about immigration, we can't make this political, the only reason you have to say that is because it is about that. And that's totally obvious. That's the reality. You don't say, this meeting has nothing to do with sunflowers. We are not talking about sunflowers tonight. That's not on the agenda. I don't want to hear a single word about it. Someone would go, what are you talking about? That's what's the relationship there? We don't want to talk about that. Nobody does. Why would you have to have a ban on that, you know? But immigration, no, they have to ban it because it's all about that. And they have to be so neurotic about it because it's all about that. But the guard thing as well, anyway. So if they say, well, we have to double our police force in Ballaghaderreen, let's say, right? Okay, great idea. No harm in that, because it's not about immigration, it's about guards and seesaws. But if that's true for Ballaghaderreen, then it's true for Roscrea, and it's true for Aruski, and it's true for Lisdoonvarna, and it's true for Moville, and it's true for Drogheda, and it's true for Dublin, and etc., etc. O'Connell Street, there's not enough guards. Cork City, there's not enough guards. So if you're doing it for Ballaghaderreen, we're going to have to double the police force of the entire country while we're hemorrhaging guards anyway, because they're also one of the reasons they're so dissatisfied with the social catastrophe that is the Irish state with this immigration stuff and just lack of sentencing and everything, right? Why would you want to be on the front line of the state as it's administered currently? So they're leaving, and you want to, in effect, even though you're acting the country bumpkin, where we just want the extra guards in our town, if you actually examine the idea, well, if you're doing that, you need to do that for the entire country, because Ballaghaderreen isn't special, right? So how are you going to do that while they're leaving? And they're leaving because largely this immigration stuff and how the state is being run. So you can't get away from it. It's about the state. It's about, you know, the hundreds of migrants bust into your town. It didn't just happen to your town. It happened to everyone. The answer lies beyond the parish boundaries of Ballaghaderreen. I hate to tell you, right? So you can put on your high-vis jackets all you want, and you can hold your candle, and you can say, we're definitely not here because of immigration. And when Mongo here, Brain, gets on stage and points the finger at the one person who is actually trying to bring attention to what matters, you can do that all you want, but it's not going to change it. And bear in mind the connection of all these rats like Frayne, right? The one person there who is political, they were all being political. That's the lie. Everything's political here. The one person who was political who came down without anyone paying him or any of that was Phil. Phil has been around the country. He's seen it all. And he came down and put fuel in his car and might have gotten a few buy me a coffees. I hope he got plenty. But as things are, generally speaking, if someone like that goes down to do that, they'll probably lose money, not gain it, right? Contrary to what the media will tell you. And he doesn't live in Ballaghaderreen. He went down basically out of the goodness of his heart, and these muppets clapped against him for this scumbag who was pointing his finger at him. But that's the thing I wanted to raise as well, is that these people, like here's the comparison I would make. You know, if there was a local industrial plant making, I don't know, some metallurgy or something like that, right? There's some industrial plant that churns out toxic smoke basically and has dodgy workers who are brought in on shipping containers. I mean, we're starting to talk like reality now, but you know, some scenario like that, Aaron Brockovich, if you've ever seen that or something. And you're an intrepid person who decides to go in and sort of walk past the security box and start asking questions and start maybe taking pictures and say, what's going on here? And of course, suddenly all the people, the little workers, run out in the security. They start putting the hand in front like that, and they go, "Who are you? Who are you?" La 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 la. You know, they're hiding stuff. That this whole thing is rotten, and effectively they're having an allergic reaction to sunlight. They don't want someone casting an eye on it because they know that the whole thing is a big corrupt enterprise, and they cannot tolerate being exposed. So instead of saying, hey, you know, you can ask questions all you want, you can take pictures if you want, of so long as it's not a security issue, you can take pictures. We're proud of our facility. It's very good. It's an open platform. Ask me anything. But no, you can always tell corruption by this stuff, right? When a bunch of people in high vises with their little lanyards come up and start shooing you away, right? And they all seem panicked. Everybody seems panicked. That's how you can always tell there is a scenario where a certain cadre of people at the top of whether it's a company or a town or whatever, they don't want someone sort of breaking their control. It's an analogy I always use, but a cult, right? The first thing a cult will do is don't listen to alternative sources of information. Only get your information from me. Only talk to me. Don't anybody asking questions is a vicious, nasty troublemaker, etc., etc. These are just classic hallmarks of these things, and that's what you see. It was the same in Ross Gray. I've seen it a million times. Phil might be forward. Phil might be like, you know, kind of marches into places and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's not Phil's attitude is the issue. Oh, well, if someone had just been more gentle, they wouldn't have. No, it's not. That's not the case. That's why Phil is perfect for this stuff, because it's not really about Phil. It's just the fact that he kicks the hornet's nest. They don't want someone shaking it up. So, and they'll say, well, we don't want interference. And again, I come back to my previous point. But you don't mind there being a bunch of state-funded left-wing NGOs in the town and at the meeting, keeping an eye on everything, that everything goes okay. And you don't mind Michael Frayn that he's got all these fingers and pies with the state-funded enterprises and stuff, the same state who are doing all of this to you. That's fine. So interference is the name of the game, right? Really. And political involvement and scheming and mouthpiecing, as your man said, that's the name of the game. But when the wrong person does it, there's big trouble. And again, it was the same in Ross Gray. The Lowrys and all those in Ross Gray, they had no problem with someone coming down and saying, well, you're not being racist, are you? And RTE questioning them, and are the people of Ross Gray racist? That's fine. Ask away. We'll say, no, we're not. No, we're not. We just services. But you can ask that away. That's a perfectly legitimate critique vector for you to come in on. But if you come in and you say, well, my criticism is that you're actually too tolerant, and you actually have these connections, and so and so, suddenly that criticism is not allowed. So, and you saw with Owen Murphy as well. He was a local journalist. He's done some good work. Shannon Side, I believe. I kind of remember him from Ruski. And I think he went to News Talk for a while. I think the Dublin establishment bought him out. But I'm not sure what he's doing now. Anyway, but he jumped in on Phil pretty quickly. And I thought he was better than this, because I have respected his journalism in the past. But the first thing he said to Phil is, and he knows perfectly well who Phil is, of course, he says, Where did you come from? And Phil says, well, why are you asking me that? I know where you're going with that. And he goes, no, I'm just wondering, did you travel here? Which is, of course, the language of the Aoife Gallaghers and the NGOs and all that, ISDs, various agencies. It's always that Philip Dwyer traveled, Gerard Murphy traveled, whoever else traveled. It's one of those buzzwords. And he was using it. And I'm kind of going, whose ass are you trying to kiss? Are you trying to bring that back to your boss or whatever to tell them that you asked Phil Dwyer if he traveled to stoke up hate? Or is that what you're really trying to do? Is that the level we're at here? Why don't you start asking questions of Michael Frayne? Why don't you start asking questions about these integration NGOs, and which are basically bribes, all these various things? It's state money to people. Even stuff like, even little things like, let's say the state hands €1 million to Ballaghaderreen to build a new park. Of course, the local Gombeans can put their name on a big stupid plaque on the front of the park and take all the clout for it. So that's political capital for the next 10 years, right? Whatever, I'm the park man. So they might not bribe the politician or the local Gombean directly by handing them a brown envelope, but they say, well, if you play ball here, we'll get you your $1 million for the park and you'll be the big hero. And we'll have you really put your name in it. We'll put you front and center and all of this. And it'll seem like you've done a big coup de grace here getting the park. But in reality, towns get allocated money for parks anyway. Ballaghaderreen pay taxes. This is why you pay taxes. You get roads and parks and stuff. But they slap little badges on all of these things that should be inevitable anyway, and attach the cachet to it for the right people in the right moment. So there's political capital itself can be a form of bribery, is what I'm saying, and that can be a fungible asset that can be dished out and handed out. So these things can be complicated, but what's my point again? Is that basically they can't tolerate criticism, or they can't tolerate. Basically, they have this whole thing kind of sewn up, and so if someone walks in and says, "Hey, I'm here as a free citizen of this country, who I'm entitled to go to any town I want, obviously, just like the Algerians or whatever," and just like people will come and ask you, is Ballaghaderreen racist? And you'll say, that's a very good question. No, we're not. We're very good, actually. Well, what if someone wants to come to you and say, what's the story with these connections? Most of the people of Ballaghaderreen have an issue with immigration and not lack of seesaws. Why don't you represent it properly? Why are you catapulted into the media constantly? And what's your real agenda? What's your actual answer to all of this? I'm kind of going on, but one more point I want to make as well. Well, one of several more. But isn't it just mad how I find this gobsmacking, right? We've heard for years that when 200 people are proposed to be brought in on a bus into a town against the wishes of the residents, the controlled opposition just the controlled opposition who are sort of installed in the town or groomed, the likes of this guy, will say, well, it's not really about immigrants themselves per se. It's not even about mass immigration into the country itself per se. It's just about we don't have enough resources to match it. If you gave us the resources to match it, we could all hold hands and have harmony and all this. Those resources will never come. But that's my way of opposing it, right? And also, we weren't consulted well enough. Well, we've heard that a million times, and it's been parodied at this point into oblivion. It's tiring to hear that now. But what gets me is that when a boy is allegedly gang RAPED'd by migrants, what's the response from the same operators? We don't have enough resources, my services, the facilities, the same thing. Like, I never thought it would actually go that far. I thought that when something as awful as that happens, they would sort of shift the tone a little bit. But actually, they came out and they basically just reached into the bag and they go, what'll we go with? Same thing as always. It's like you have the same dinner every day and you go, what'll we have today? Let's have spaghetti bolognese again. It's that type of thing. They just pulled out the same old dinner and said, we'll just do that again today. We'll just say, even though the context is totally different, now the consequences have hit us. And what do we say? Let's just say for the millionth time, we don't have enough guards. It's terrible. Let's just say there's not enough seesaws. Let's just say the doctor is too full. Yeah, we know that. You said that in 2017 when the Syrians came in. You said it in 2022 when they were bringing the Ukrainians in, and subsequently in 24 when they tried to build the modular homes. You've said that a million times. You are the professional man who every 6 months, when the latest crop of plantation people come in, or some boy gets gang raped, you're the guy who gets wheeled out and says, I'm just going to say it for the 17th million time, we don't have enough bicycle lanes and GPs and all that. And by the way, those issues are real. There aren't enough GPs. Yeah, but that's not fundamentally the issue. The reason there aren't GPs is because there's too many people who don't belong there in the town who have free access to them. And the reason the town has a crime issue isn't fundamentally because of lack of Gardaí. It's because you have criminal elements within your town, strange men from all over the world. That's obviously the issue. The dog on the street knows that. The other thing is that, look, you could have military, you could have RoboCop on every corner, right? If you have people in town of a certain disposition, they will do these things. You can have RoboCop snipers on the roof, right? That's not the issue. And you're not going to, by the way. If you're lucky, you'll have one more guard, and that's not going to happen either. Breaking news, right? But this guy will be there again. And in a year's time, when the next thing happens, what'll he say? We don't have enough Gardaí. What's going on, Roderick? What's the story? And Roderick will laugh, right? And they will all think it's great crack altogether. Any other? Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading my notes. I have Ballaghaderreen written there. That's one of the things it gets called. So let's look at some other bits of information. Computers bits, See a couple of, I'll read super chats there for a sec. Computer's frozen a little bit. Shinnock says, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My kids are like getting into Irish now at their very young age. And I'm not. I need to get back on it. But I need to catch up because I don't want them talking behind my back off Squelga, so I'm going to have to keep up with my kids at least. But for now, I'm not great. So gives 5, thank you very much, and says, in my opinion, Irish normies are hopeless, and we need to accept they won't be moved by any evidence, only when it hits personally. That's a white pill, by the way. Yeah. I know my initial reaction to things like Ballaghaderreen are, you know what, these people aren't worth trying to save. Kind of like just fuck them, basically. But then I calm down and I think, no, actually what we need to do is you need to effectively fight the psychological warfare battle, I think, which is why I'm talking about this stuff now. And I always feel like I'm not elaborating on it well enough. If only I could make 3-minute videos that sum this stuff up perfectly, maybe I should. But because it's easy to ramble on and kind of get to the point sideways, just kind of talking casually. But like to have pointed videos, pointed articles on this stuff might be a good thing as well. But the thing is, Phil Dwyer did all of it for us because, like I said at the outset, he drew the poison out and he shook the hornet's nest. Like on the spot, you might go, "Oh, Phil, not the time. Don't jump in like that," because maybe jump in later in a more diplomatic moment and you will fare better with the crowd on the spot. Yeah, you will with a couple of dozen people around you. But what Phil did was actually take the initial brunt of people wagging their finger at you on the spot, which doesn't feel nice. But actually what he did was he drew the poison out and it kind of showed what they really are. Because your man could have said, your man could have just said, listen, wait for questions or whatever, or placated Phil and moved on with this conversation. But no, what he did was it showed the reaction. It's like the garlic to a vampire or whatever. It's in the reaction, what you're dealing with, that kind of way. It's in the excessive reaction and the recoiling that you understand what you're dealing with. And not just that, but the viewing audience can see it too. So now the big story, it's a real victory, because if you look up Ballaghaderreen on social media, you will see the narrative is totally like, even though there's no big technical breakdown of Micheál Frain and all of that, people get it. People just do get it, and it's all over the place. Comment sections all over the place get it. So it's almost like I don't need to describe it. It's already kind of in a diffuse sense understood by people, or a large amount of people out there. This kind of town mentality thing and the scheming that's done from the top. People understand all that. And so Phil did better than any technical video explaining the nerdy details of it, because he just basically proverbially just rolled the grenade in and just stood back. And you know, that's a bad analogy. I know it's an analogy, euphemism, all that, right? But he just kind of he just set off the smoke bomb or whatever. I've shite at analogies tonight. You get what I'm saying, right? He let them do the work basically with the reaction, and even the town themselves will see this footage and think, "Oh shit." With all the way these comments are looking, where do I stand on that actually? Who is the bad? Was he really the bad guy? He might have seemed like the bad guy because it wasn't very the most opportune moment and all that. And maybe at the time your man rallied me up to think, oh, who's this nasty man stirring up trouble? But actually, when I look at the comment sections and when I look back at it, yeah, who is Micheál Frayne really? And is he really our man on the telly fighting our cause? Because what are we going to do? Hold candles? Go down to the stand around guards, asking to basically shout into the oblivion for more guards, which aren't going to come. And then we all go home again. And we're also angry. And we know it's immigration. They will start to think about that. So it does have a big impact in that way. And I just think the whole, like the crowd in Ballaghaderreen, they're very disappointing. And it's typical of a lot of sort of depressed towns like that. There was more gumption in Newtown Mount Kennedy, for example. They would be a case study in a great town. They weren't disavowing people. They were open to, they didn't say, we don't want outsiders here stirring things up. There was a politician in Newtown Mount Kennedy, actually. He's a Gombean, basically, long story short. And he came up with his jumper and his belly poking out or whatever, and tried to basically hoover up the political capital. And Phil, once again, was there. And Phil said, what's your story? La, 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 la. And the people there locally said, you know what? You are a scumbag and you don't actually represent us. And he stood there trying to get Phil banished, sort of, trying to play the mob. And actually, he just lost, where they actually ended up shouting your man out and getting rid of him. And they basically ran, we'll say, these kind of schemers, these Gombeans from their protest movement. And even though they didn't win in the end because the Gardaí brutalized them, they won in the sense that they cleared their town or their protest movement of these operators. This guy was like Fianna Fáil connected, total scumbag. And Phil tried to warn them and said, listen, these are schemers. And they were gotten rid of. And of course, what did you see? The town hardcore mobilized and dug their heels in. And I know that does not necessarily fix the situation because the Gardaí can beat you up in the end. But at least your own house is together. You know what I mean? The guards can come in. They can roll over you with a tank if they have to. But at least that's just you getting defeated by force. But at least you're not defeated from the inside, you know, where you're sort of dissolved before anything ever gets anywhere. And even now, after Newtown Mount Kennedy were defeated physically, we'll say, there's a strong political movement there, strong networks, and it's connected to the national scene and even the international scene, and it's not cut off. And that's the real thing. Newtown Mount Kennedy being the perfect example. That's the power that they have now, of course, because the moment someone sets a toe out of line, some undesirable, or even hints at it, Newtown Mount Kennedy genuinely are together on that sense, and they're awake to all that stuff, and they're not defeated morally and politically. They're just not. I hope that I think they're backing Rob Carey now for the election, which is great, and other things like that. So you can have like that Newtown Mount Kennedy thing where, yeah, victory is not guaranteed, but an internal victory and togetherness is a huge thing of its own in the long run. Or you can be led down to the town square, hold a candle, shout at someone who's coming to your town, who's actually on your side, pat the fella on the back who's selling you out, selling you down the river, and go home and think, oh, that was great. It's got nothing to do with anything. We wouldn't want to be political. I'm not political at all, but I do support the integration fund, that type of thing, right? Let's bake cookies with Mohammed and whoever else for RT to take a picture of, because the government are paying us to do it. But let's not be political. Let's not have anyone with an agenda involved in the situation at all. No. That wasn't, sorry, I kind of strayed from responding to the super chat there, but I just think the whole thing of like the normies don't like, you are dealing with, like, on top of the average Joe, you have people like these behavioral psychology people and the Roderick O'Gormans of the world, and then who are paid and all of that. They're the machine, effectively waging a huge psychological and information war on people at the highest levels, and then at the deepest grassroots levels. They're doing that. And then on the other side, you have independent people operating based on just sheer desire for truth and justice, effectively, and the social good, who number in the tens of thousands, who are online and highly sophisticated. I mean, the whole thing of like, if resistance was futile, their propaganda would be unnecessary. They wouldn't do all of this if there wasn't such a sophisticated operation on our own side. It's just that ours is organic and truth and justice based, but it's very sophisticated. They sometimes do, these ISDs and stuff will write reports which are effectively marveling at the sophistication of hundreds of accounts pumping out videos and this, that, and the other. And even though they try to say it's all Russian bots or North Korean pygmies or something like that, it actually, for the most part, is just people like you and me who are just aghast at the lies and sitting down making videos, pumping out content, spotting the corruption where you see it and highlighting it and blowing it up in big font and having everyone understand it and simplifying it, turning it into memes, turning it into little nuggets that people can understand, spreading it, building up this movement. That's happening. So I feel like the onus is on us to not be demoralized by the sheep-like nature of, let's say, a majority, but to sort of fight the battle, So to think, you know what? No, we will actually help Ballaghaderreen to get out from under the black cloud of these people. We'll help them, inform them, moralize them, inspire them, and all of that, and actually turn that tide, turn Ballaghaderreen into Newtown, Mount Kennedy, etc. But I get your point though. So Emmanuel Godson, where is it? There you go. He says, I have zero sympathy for, okay, contrary to my point there, I suppose. I have zero, gives 5, thank you. I have zero sympathy for the people of that town. They are being replaced without a fight. Yeah, look, I also do have contempt for that type of stuff. And you can't define a town by a couple of people jeering. These things are isolated in a way. And they're based on the mood of a moment, or, so it's not, you don't want to over read too much into it. But there's definitely a thing of like, as I titled this video, Ballaghaderreen says nothing, so like, and this is the thing, Jonathan Bowden, I can never find this video. If only I could. If someone, see, I posted it on Twitter ages ago and I can never key search term it. Because X doesn't really work very well with that these days, but because I did post, it's a Jonathan Bowden video. If someone wants to put it in chat. If anybody wants to search my Twitter handle with Jonathan Bowden and see if you can find I posted a video on it. He's an English orator, talked about this, how people can be slimy little eels when it comes down to this stuff, when the pressure is on, where if you're standing up against something like immigration, where that'll get you in trouble, they'll be delighted you're doing it. I'm not going to try and rehash that. Let's just take Ballaghaderreen as the example. They'll basically, a lot of the people who might have jeered Phil and clapped for this Mongo, me all friend, they would at home, behind the scenes or in the pub, say, Jesus, these fucking foreigners are all over the town, the fuckers, we need to clear them out and blah, 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 and they're taking over and all, you name it, they'll be saying it, right? But then in the right moment, when someone says, basically when you say that publicly, and someone tries to hang you for it, they'll come in and say, "Yeah, you shouldn't be saying that. You're causing trouble. We're all in this together," or something, and they'll hang you. They will hang you. They will speak to you one way and privately, and then they will hang you because there's this kind of strange trepidation and fear people have, and willingness to stick the knife in just because they feel like it's in the moment, the momentum is going in that direction in the right context. So they'll be very context and momentum and power based. Who's got the power in this moment? Like, had the crowd, let's say, a certain amount of the crowd initially sided with Phil, and there was the right little moment, they could have started baying at your man Micheál Frein. They are kind of like that. But once they first sense that they have it, and that's what you see in a moment like that, is that they'll sort of all start jeering once they've ascertained that it's the thing you're supposed to do or whatever. It's just despicable anyway. Patrick O'Shea gives 5 and says, when Phil was asked why he was there, he should have said, why is it not safe? What about tourists? Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm watching it as well and kind of going, say this or say that, but in the heat of the moment, it's easy to kind of. I think he did very well, actually. He said, I'm here to. I'm just asking a question, which was great. It's just a question. I just asked you a question. They go, well, it's not in good taste to ask the question at this time. Okay, but why are you foaming at the mouth? Okay, it's not in good taste. It's guilty. But why are you foaming at the mouth? Because I am piercing your little bubble of control, and that's what's really getting you. That's what was going on with your mano. But just to see him like a little tyrant, he had his moment, and he thought, "Yeah, I've got them now. They'll start cheering for me. I have it now." Scumbag. But yeah, the fickle crowd. It's like, you just have to work it, like play the game, and try to get Ballaghaderreen to sort of get aware to this stuff and think, and basically say to them, if you want to be Pied Pipered into the oblivion, then work away, I suppose. You will end up being 10% of your town, and more of these incidents will sadly keep reoccurring. Micheál Frein will just get more powerful, which seems to be, I'd say, all he's interested in my opinion, Micheál Frein. And these are just my opinions. And happy days. It'll just keep going, and you won't get your guards either, and you won't get any of it, and you won't have any political organization or mobilization against continued mass immigration, and also, let's just say, national representation. So the way in the town you could have the Muslim group or whatever, right? And dare I say it, you have an Irish group, a group who say, you know what, Muslims will have a group and say, we're the Muslims and we don't want to be discriminated against. And if we're targeted, if a Muslim has a rude word said to him in a supermarket, or he gets targeted by a bunch of lads who beat him up and say, oh, you Muslim, this or that. If something like that happens, we're going to be up in arms. We're going to be I won't say kicking off, but we're going to be up in arms, advocating against this slight against our people. Well, at the very least, in a place like Ballaghaderreen, it's getting to be that time where the Irish people have to have some self-conscious collectivism, right? It's only fair and right, and in keeping with what every other group gets to do. You need to do that. You need to politically mobilize as a people and look after your own interests. But of course, you're not going to do that when it amounts to holding a candle and saying you need more guards, which you're not going to get, and going home again, and doing that every 6 months with these lads. No. What really should you be expecting of a leader who is speaking is saying, we're not trying to deport every last foreigner from Ballaghaderreen. We understand there's gradations of these things, but there's definitely hundreds of people who just aren't meant to be here. There would be legal ability to get rid of them. They don't have to be here. They should get out of Ballaghaderreen legally and start there. Promote rights for Irish people there. just like Indigenous Native Americans get their reservations and stuff. Well, let's have some perks, right? Same way you get diversity bonuses and all that. Let's shift it and say, hey, if you can give extra protections for minorities, then the Irish people in Ballaghaderreen are a minority now. So where's their protections? We need some protections. We need some special rights. And we need to deport a lot of these people from Ballaghaderreen, and more importantly, subsequently from the country overall en masse. And we need to be part of the national movement, and that's it. And this parochialism thing, I've said it a million times, I'm blue in the face, but the parochialism thing is just ridiculous. I'm going to put on a high-vis jacket, and when a critic arrives, I'll say, you're not part of this town, you're not one of us. But 300 Algerians are. And we're going to bake cookies for disabled children, and RT are going to be standing there with a camera because they're so part of us. We need to tell everyone how part of us they are and how good they are. But you're not. You're from 40 miles away. You're not one of us, you fecking outsider. Like that shit is just, not long for this world. And then the good thing about Ballaghaderreen as well is because they're so far gone, if they really want to persist in following these Pied Pipers, then brilliant. You will be the example. We will hold you up as an example for the rest of the country, and you will be a living, breathing, suffering example for any other town, any other city or situation. For us, the nationalists who actually care about this stuff and actually want to stop it, we can hold you up as a shining example, along with some of the others, Ross Gray, Lisdoon Varna, who bent the knee, followed the Pied Pipers, castigated critics who were trying to help them, and buried their heads in the sand and clapped like seals for traitors. Brilliant, because I know how it's going to play out. I know exactly. It's playing out exactly as I described in 2016, 2017. I've been saying it that long, so I know how it's going to play out in 10 years too. I've got a track record of being right about this stuff, and it's not going to look pretty for Ballaghaderreen, not one bit. And the fact is, when it's your kid it gets into one of these situations, Broderick's not going to be there to help you. Micheál Frayne isn't going to be there to help you and say, I'm answerable for this stuff. I actually did nothing along the way. Michael will be there for you, but they might light a candle and milk it for a little bit of political capital as they go, but they're not going to be there. So that might seem abstract. Oh well, it's always someone else's kid, it's always someone else, not me. I'll come in and out of town quickly, I'll be careful, I'll do this, I'll do that. Okay, well, retreat into your house. Your kids can never go out to play. Your town center looks like Haiti after a while, starting to get there in a lot of towns. And you refuse to tribe up, as someone mentions there in the chat. Or you'll tribe up with a family and a couple of neighbors, a little bit of family, but you're not tribing up as a people, as a town. So you'll be in these little splinter sort of groups. But that's not enough, you need to be politically tribed up as well. So anyway, I'll just move on to, I'm going on a bit, like, who else was there? Good. The tabs take ages to move. I had loads of stuff there. I mean, maybe I just won't bother. Yeah, the computer's not really working anyway, so won't bother. Just a lot of tabs on. Like, I had one there was like 2016. There was an article about how high unemployment was in Ballaghaderreen, and that local hotels. So that's a good sign anyway. Little did they know that the following year, a bunch of Syrian migrants were brought into all these hotels, and that's what they were being prepared for all along. So like, and also that the population had suffered decline, but the national authorities predicted that, well, up to 2040, the town of Ballaghaderreen will grow significantly, and so this will provide opportunities and this, that, and the other. And you kind of go, wait, all of the people are emigrating from Ballaghaderreen. Like, a lot of the young people are going because there aren't any decent jobs, and the few that stay, like, there will be a bit of drug abuse and a bit of unemployment and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not growing in any fashion, and there's no jobs, no prospects. So how is the population going to grow significantly? Are the state planners aware of something that we don't know? of course, no, it doesn't matter if there's big unemployment. We'll bring in hundreds and thousands of foreigners and we'll put them up on state funding that we could never give Irish people, apparently. And so the population will grow, this dependent population. And they won't be under the same pressures as Irish people, because unemployment doesn't necessarily have to affect them, especially if they're being put up in hotels as permanent dependees of the state. And now the state knows that, and they say it in not so many words. And of course, the local Gombeans, they know that perfectly well too. That's why they're doing up the hotel a year in advance. And of course, if those Gombean developers know, the little political operators know as well. And so much like there's opportunities financially, political opportunities, you could be the safe pair of hands, Mr. Man sort of playing the sides. Like, these people all know well in advance. I'm sure all these local Gombean aspiring councillors or whatever, they all know what the crack is. Like, they might act thick, like, oh, Gura Mila Mahagut, everybody, I'm here for Super Value, or what, I'm kind of exaggerating it, but like, we're all in it together. See you in Super Value in the morning. Hold your candle and be a good boy and shut up. Those people, it's all very twee on the surface of it. But if you said to them, like, they're smarter than they come across. They know the plan for Ballaghaderreen has long been, for a decade or two, we're going to fill the place, much like it is for Ireland as a whole. We're going to fill the place with foreigners because we have vacant properties. We're going to juice the place to the gills, and Lidl can open up another Lidl, or whatever. They can open up another supermarket, and there's money to be made in the town for the select few based on the juiced up population. And there'll be a little bit of state funding here and there, but not half enough. And there's going to be a lot of blowback, and we'll have to manage that, and that's it. They know that, like, so, acting outraged in the moment because there's not enough guards, it's just bullshit, because they know what the plan is and they are effectively signed up to it. They're not coming out and saying, why does Ireland have to take these millions of migrants even though it's destroying everything? Like, why does that have to happen? And if it's happening in Ireland, it thus happens in Ballaghaderreen. It's just a natural connection there. And so we can't just stop it by complaining as Ballaghaderreen. We have to stop it by saying the state shouldn't be taking them in. And we actually stand with Newtown, Mount Kennedy and all the others. We actually form one big thing, as opposed to, you're not welcome in this town. This is a Ballaghaderreen issue for Ballaghaderreen people. And we all stand strong. We stand strong in adamant silence. And we stand strong in the fact that this is adamantly nothing to do with anything. Don't we all agree, everybody? This has nothing to do with anything. And that's literally what these, like, Pied Pipers will effectively say. I mean, there are not enough seesaws or whatever. But in effect, what they're saying is, can I get a hooray from the crowd that we all agree that this has absolutely nothing to do with anything? And people go, yeah, we're strong, we're together, and we all agree strong together that this has nothing to do with anything. Now, how someone can't see that sort of rallying happening, the fact that you're being led to that conclusion, and not say, well, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Because it definitely has something to do with something anyway. But they go, no, this has nothing to do with anything. We're just a bit upset with the government. But it's got nothing to do with anything. It's not political. It's not about this. It's not about that. But it is about guards. But it's definitely not about anything else. And anyone who says it is a terrible monster. Anyway, I'm rambling. I just wanted to change tabs. Yeah, one of the security people, by the way, people were harassing Phil, like some of them anyway, were basically threatening him live on air. And then there was this one guy who was supposed to be security with an earpiece on. I'd say this was heavily monitored by guards and stuff as well. It's just, what's mad to me is that, it's like, if you look at Ukraine, you have these battlefields. They almost have like French warfare. There's tanks, there's UAVs, there's drones, there's GPS warfare. You have all sorts of stuff going on, drones flying up and bombing people in their faces, basically, and the rest of it. And there's all this comms warfare basically going on, like satellite stuff. And so there's this like multi-spectrum, three-dimensional sort of active war happening. And it's not just two people shooting rifles at each other. It's actually much thicker. It's much more three-dimensional. It's like this, what's the word? Full spectrum sort of warfare on every dimension and at every level. And the thing is that like if you didn't know any better, you would get to a town like because bear in mind when this first came out, the guards and all of these various agencies, Moonshot, CVE, you name it, the whole state and their behavioral psychology, the guards themselves, the intels and all that, they will be watching this like hawks because they've seen O'Connell Street or Parnell Square and all that. So they'll be watching it going, sort of getting into battle mode, going, let's tap into all of our local development company and PPN, public participation networks. Ballaghaderreen says we're all together, NGO, so-called. The GA integration people, or the super value manager, will get every, like, we'll tap into every last little thing we have. We'll use our surveillance. So we'll have everybody's phone mapped out, probably AI mapped out, right? So what's being said, to who, networks mapped, everything. And I'm not saying this guy's a guard necessarily, but we will have people in the crowd who are undercover guards, and they're recording, and we will have probably spotters from afar watching it, plainclothes, various people, right? We'll have all that going on. And then the real battle, of course, is the information warfare. All of the journalists, all of the Gombeen installed politicians who are standing up there with the mic, and the various reactions, everything is attended to. And so it's just mad. Like, the people there think they're going along to just a community meeting, but they're actually going along to a strenuously choreographed fake event, basically, that has got years worth of, like I always say, military grade social engineering taking place. Much like an example I gave streaming with Phil recently was when the US defeated Japan in World War II and they landed, Douglas MacArthur landed and took the picture with the Emperor, demeaning the Emperor. They took control of the state immediately, basically, right? Totally defeated military. And they took control of the state. They didn't just say, oh, we're in charge now. We won. You're all defeated. So we're in charge now. And so go about your business being Japanese as you were before. And we'll just, we run shit now. They couldn't do that because, of course, they would soon face uprising. Insurgency, effectively. They're because they're an enemy conquering hostile power, outsiders. So, of course, the first thing they do is start, like, in a very detailed fashion, mapping out the society. Things called the Zaibatsu, which were these big companies like Mitsubishi and stuff, ran by these old aristocratic families almost. They broke them apart. They changed gender relations. They did this, they did that. There was like military grade social engineering happening. And probably the Japanese at the time, because they're told on the surface of it, well, the emperor was bad and the war was a mistake, and now we're moving on and it's all for the best and we all have blue jeans and hamburgers or whatever, right? So they just thought, actually, this isn't so bad. But they don't realize that all that messaging, the whole thing, is a deep military grade psychological operation, and every institution in your society is being sort of torn asunder and put back together in a different way, and you're going to follow it. There's an element of that with these little towns where you think, how could a little town like this matter so much? But in fact, it actually does. And it matters deeply to the state that they don't go off the reservation, which is why someone like Phil walks in, interjects, asks a simple question, which behind closed doors, everyone in Ballaghaderreen agrees with. And yet they have such control from insiders within the community in the right positions. And they've harnessed that just the right way that they can basically have a bunch of people come out with candles and say, this has nothing to do with anything. Let's all go home. After allegedly a boy is gang raped by foreigners in the town. After the town has spent the last decade in dribs and drabs protesting the importation of lots of foreigners, often led astray by the likes of these Mihal friends. And the amount of, they got an award. They won, Ballaghaderreen apparently won Person of the Year or something like that in 2018 for its efforts in integration. more bullshit. There's so many funds, so many little integration funds in Ballaghaderreen, it's unreal. Like, they were promised the world, they were promised the guards, they were promised the doctors, promised all this stuff. The amount of NGO people and super value managers and whoever else. I'm not defaming the super value manager in Ballaghaderreen, by the way. I do not know them. It's an analogy. But the amount of those people that have been paid off, it's a case study that deserves extensive research, I would say. If we had the kind of money and resources the state has, you could really study this at a deep level. If you could get more access, but because Ballaghaderreen has been repeatedly beaten up effectively, and every time they get told, no, it's fine, we'll get more money, we'll get more resources, I'll talk to the state for you, don't worry, again, we'll ask for more guards, we'll give out about it a little bit, and it just keeps happening over and over again. And the political control matrix in Ballaghaderreen is clearly very, very strong. And the demoralization is very clearly very, very high. For something like this not to be, let's just say, more spicy than it is. There should be hardcore political organizing and outrage, peacefully and legally, in Ballaghaderreen. But what you end up with is this piss weak, zombified, controlled reaction. The only way that could happen is through extensive political control. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so that was the guy with the earpiece. I thought that was a little bit. Who else have we got? We've got this Claire Curran. All these people, like, yeah, what's her name? Claire something or other. This Sinn Féin one. Again, an example I'll give with Sinn Féin. I don't know this woman, but with Sinn Féin, there was I think it was Carrick McCross a few years ago. There was allegedly, I don't know, is it alleged or fact, but anyway, we'll say allegedly. I mean, I think it's a fact, but I'm choosing my words. I think this was reported on as 100, like even by mainstream, as just like fact, right? And I think Carrick McCross is the right term. So I'm speaking loosely, but it was a woman allegedly on the way home from a night out was going to her gaff, and some alleged Roma individual followed her into the house and RAPED'd her, and the town was outraged. Carrick McCross, rootin' tootin', Monaghan, community, lots of tough people there. They've been pretty hardcore overrun. Breaks my heart because Carrick McCross is such a nice town physically. But people are outraged, and I was following the Facebook groups in Carrick McCross at the time. This is years ago, and they were livid. They were all like, "Enough is enough, la la la." Every last knee of Normie and Dermot Normie was basically full on red pilled. Like had you harnessed that, or not even harnessed it or manipulated it, but had you just said, "Hey, this political outrage can go where it wants," you know what I mean? Just that. Just let it go where it wants. Organize as you will. We're not going to scheme on you. They would have had, look, let's just say, solutions and proactive ideas, we'll say, to some of these problems peacefully and legally. And what I heard behind the scenes is that the Sinn Féin people there was meant to be a big demo at the time, I think, against it, which ended up being cancelled or maybe just subverted. Basically, word on the street is that Sinn Féin put the brakes on it. They had a very powerful political machine locally. It's up north and all that. And they had enough. Tammany Hall sort of clout within the community to sort of put the brakes on it, and it all just disappeared in a puff of smoke. And Carrick McCross is a lot the worse for it now, but so I mean that's kind of what you have here as well, is these power brokers just kind of do lapdogging for the state basically, to control a heated situation. So that's the Sinn Féin one. I don't know much about her. I can't say much. There was this woman. So she was the leader of the Ballaghaderreen Concerned Citizens Group. She came up to Phil after the Argy Bargy and had this to say. Very interesting.
Tonight, I'll say it again, to support and be in solidarity with the family of the victim of that horrendous crime on Thursday.
Look at how strained it is, by the way. You know, like she's almost panting in strain. Like if you were casual about it, you'd just say, listen, you know, tonight is just about tonight specifically is about a small vigil to pay respect to the family. It's just such a weird thing. Again, it's dressing it up as decorum, because it's like, well, no, it's a protest, really. Okay, people can, like, you know, say, go down to mass and say a prayer if they want to, right? On their own back. This is a political demonstration about an issue. You didn't get all these people to show up just because an individual crime here or there. I'm not comparing these crimes, one is worse than the other, but if someone's house gets burgled or whatever, or arson, burned to the ground, whatever, you know, most people would be like, Jesus, that was mad that happened, that crime. Even someone murdered, like, to take the ultimate crime, right? You go, oh, did you hear someone was murdered last night? Yeah, that's mad. Someone was beaten up, or some person killed their spouse, or I don't know, whatever it was. But yeah, there was the Garda tape, you know, and a big scene, and someone got murdered. You'd be like, that's mad. Basically, that's mad, you know, that happened, or that's terrible, you know. But anyway, on to the next news page. You know, it's just crimes happen, you know. It's the specific nature of this crime and the background to it is what gets people out in a march, you know what I mean? Obviously. And so it's not about nothing, it is about something. And the fact that she's almost panting to go, this is not about anything. It's like you're giving yourself away. Like, why don't you just let it be what it is?
Regardless of who the perpetrators are, the fact is that a child has been raped in our town, and Ballaghaderreen concerned citizens came here tonight to support a family whose child has been viciously assaulted or sexually assaulted. We have to, because this isn't about migration tonight, excuse, yes, they did. Excuse me.
You know, it's just I don't know. It's like I've made the point already, but like she's having to strain the issue. Why you're all out because a child was assaulted as such, right? Which is terrible. And we can all be very solemn about that and say that's terrible and it deserves our, you know, grief or whatever, right? That's fine. Of course it does. But what are you all out for? Like, are you a show of solidarity, a show of outrage, just that crime? I'm trying to understand what she's getting at. Is it a show of outrage at the existence of crime, the crime itself? Or because, like, you know, if a guy, like, there was a Cavan there a few years ago, there was a guy suicided himself and his whole family, right? Brutal, terrible, like as bad as it possibly gets, right? And you know, people didn't go out, I assume, in, where was it? I can't remember what part of Cavan, but they didn't go out in, let's say, Virginia in the hundreds to sort of, you know, as far as I know, to like demonstrate against it or something like that, because it's just something that happened. Like, it's not necessarily just about a crime. Everyone's out to protest something beyond the individual specific nature of just that crime. Clearly, we all know that. It's sort of like I'm stating the obvious, but she's having to unstate the obvious, which is what I find strange.
Allegedly.
We are here, Ballaghaderreen concerned citizens organise this peaceful gathering tonight.
Notice how she
I'll say
said
it again. Ballaghaderreen concerned citizens organise this peaceful gathering tonight.
Allegedly.
We are here, Ballaghaderreen concerned citizens organise this peaceful gathering tonight. I'll say it again, to support and be in solidarity with the family of the victim of that horrendous crime on Thursday night in our town. This town is reeling and sore and angry and upset, regardless of who the perpetrators are.
Okay, the town is reeling and sore and angry and upset, and you want more guards. Do you think if you had 5 more guards, this wouldn't have happened? I mean, are you going to have a guard on every street corner with some sort of infrared to see through walls to be able to see everywhere? Like, what are you talking about? It's fucking ridiculous. It's not about. There may not be enough guards, perhaps, as there isn't in anywhere in the country. That's not the issue. The issue is what it is. Anyway, so what else have we got? Michael Fitzmaurice, what did he have to say? Probably a slightly better, we'll say.
That town. And there has been an incident, and there was probably fear from people to see basically the lawlessness that's starting in that town. And there has been an incident during the week. Gardaí are investigating that. I would appeal for calm, but I think Drew Harris, in fairness to Micheál Freyan and other public representatives in that area and community groups, the Garda numbers in Ballaghaderreen, the Garda station is closed a lot of the time. I would appeal to the likes of Drew Harris and Helen McEntee, the minister, to basically come down, to be quite frank about it, because this.
See, I expect better from Fitzmaurice, slightly better, but actually it's not really, because it's like, I need Helen McEntee and Roderick O'Gorman to come down. The thing, it almost reminds me of like, where I saw this somewhere else recently where was it? It's another place, Phil was, Athlone, where, God bless their cotton socks, there was a woman going around from the area with see, this is the naivety that's out there, understandably, and it's coming from a good place. There's a woman going around at this like incoherent, organic little protesting outside the centre in Athlone. She's going around the place with a clipboard and a pen, and it turns out she's doing a petition. She's getting everyone to sign the petition. And again, that feels good. Much like it feels good to hold a candle and walk around the place, right? It feels great. We're doing what we were raised to do. Put money in the trochera box, do a petition, trust the media being the fourth estate, call the media if you have an issue. They'll sort it out for you. They'll expose the truth or something like that. And you canvass your politician or whatever, right? And one of those things is you sign a petition. It's like secondary school, you know. You go hunting for Easter eggs or something like that. It's great fun, or there's a little treasure hunt or something. Or yeah, it's like going orienteering. It's just an activity that feels productive, you know. Gets you involved. It gets you participating in some way. So you get your petition, and what is it? 200 people outside this centre in Athlone signed the petition. I'm John O'Leary or whatever, and I'm against this. And we're all putting our shoulder to the wheel now, and we're making it clear that we are really unhappy about this. And we have 320 signatures here, and we're going to send that by registered post to Roderick O'Gorman's office. Now, Roderick O'Gorman, I'll just say he will wipe himself with that petition and laugh, right? I was going to say he'd wipe someone else, but whatever. You know, like, think of the smirk on, and I'm sure it wouldn't get past the admin and the staff. They wouldn't actually bother him with it. But let's say someone says, "I've got a funny one for you, Roderick. This just came in," and he opens it up and he sees "to whom it may concern" or whatever, and there's all these, in his mind, complete nobodies. That's the way these people would think with their little petition. Can you imagine the smirk, the grin on that man's face when if he were to see that? You'd think, that's so funny. If God bless you, write your petition. If you get past the political control matrix and actually start protesting, we'll have the riot squad there and they'll beat the shit out of you. So that's what's going to happen. That's what I make of your petition. But thanks very much for playing. You know, and I feel the same about, Michael Fitzmaurice, I think, knows better. He's just saying what he has to say on the radio. But, like, Helen McEntee and Roderick O'Gorman to come down. Like, the idea is that Helen McEntee and Roderick O'Gorman are acting in good faith. They're just misguided, and they haven't realised the consequences of what their policies are on the ground. And they need to actually speak to the people of Ballaghaderreen, walk the streets, do a little media tour, and they would go, do you know what? Nobody can see a dentist. People are being afraid of being raped on the main street, or their children. And Irish people feel like foreigners, and they feel totally marginalised and alienated in their own community. Oh yeah, that's bad, actually. Jeannie Mac. So Roderick turns to Helen and he goes, Helen, we must stop doing that. This isn't working out. Yeah, we better stop. Okay, we'll go back to Dublin and change the policy. Okay, no more people coming in. All the people who are here who can easily be shipped home because we have the right to do it without any fuss. We'll start with them anyway, and we'll just start reversing this. Thanks for letting us know, Ballaghaderreen. It didn't occur to me. And we really care. When we get to Ballaghaderreen, we see the state of things and we go, that's very troubling. I must go. I mean, that's why you would expect of a statesperson. So much like a petition and hunting for Easter eggs, it's all great fun. And wouldn't it be lovely to participate like that? But actually, they're at war with you. They all are. So, you need to kind of realize that. It's a sort of pessimistic thing in a way, but it's not. It's positive. It's like, you're better off being Newtown Mount Kennedy or Coolock, peacefully and legally, in the sense that you recognize that the state are against you, the media are against you. A lot of these local wheeler-dealer politicians, professional politicians effectively, they're bought in. And it's just you. There's just you and various other activists and nationalists around the country and other towns and stuff who are just dead against it. That's all you have. There's no point canvassing or petitioning, whatever the word is, Roderick O'Gorman or Helen McEntee. Like, what?
To the likes of Drew Harris and Helen McEntee, the minister, to basically come down, to be quite frank about it, because this Garda station needs to be opened on a continuous basis to make sure that the people that live in that town, that their fears are basically allayed. And also, we want to make sure that, the promises that were made, this is what all this is, the promises that have been made over the last number of years. Roderick O'Gorman made promises, Fine Gael made promises. What was going to be done in the line of extra police and extra integration, extra services being brought to Ballaghaderreen has not been delivered on. And now we are seeing, we are getting phone calls from people, especially elderly people, who aren't comfortable walking the streets. And that's not the way any town or any society should be.
See, the question remains, and question mark, and what? Broderick O'Gorman and Helen McEntee need to have a walk around Ballaghaderreen. The guards weren't delivered on. The guards were never the issue in the first place. That was fake. That was a fake complaint to begin with. It's like, so the fake opposition in your town gave the fake excuse that it's really just about guards and doctors. Where even if they gave you loads of guards and doctors, the real problem wouldn't have been addressed, which is that in the first place, the real problem is that people just didn't want to take in lots of immigrants. That was only a cover story, conveniently pushed by the politicians, and people were too scared to push back against it. So that was fake to begin with. And even your fake excuse, you didn't live up to. So you didn't even give them the fake thing, which is a couple of guards and whatever. You didn't even do that, right? They probably lost guards and lost doctors. So it's like, it's on every level, it's bad. Like, they obviously hold you in contempt. You are on your own. You are like a Ukrainian soldier who is behind enemy lines or something, just running around the place trying to survive. You don't get to call the guards. You don't get to report it to a human rights NGO. You're dodging drones or artillery or whatever, and you're on your own. It's kind of like that, There is no state agency. There's no ombudsman. There's no petition. There's no media. There's no savior in, like, Mihal, whatever his name is. He's not actually strenuously advocating for change in your town. Let's be real, right? It's just all political jockeying. So you were on your own. Like, you were going to wake up one day and be 10% of people in your own town, and these crimes will be happening often, right? You'll be fully subjugated in your own town by these various other people, and there's nothing you'll be able to do about it. And these people won't be there for you. It's like you really are on your own. Like you have to. I don't know the answers necessarily, but you have to start. You have to stop following bullshit. I think that's my message for tonight, because I've talked about this stuff many times before. Is if someone said to me, "Well, okay, Gerard, what are the answers?" So if you're Mr. Know-it-all, I would just be like, "Stop following bullshit. You don't want lots of foreigners being brought into your town. You certainly want to stop, and maybe a lot of them who are there, who don't belong there, to be deported from your town and your country." Honestly, I'd say every last person in Ballaghaderreen behind closed doors would totally agree with me on that. That's obviously the issue. That's obviously the issue, and that's obviously the solution. So I don't know how you would defeat the state with all its power, and I wouldn't want to, because peacefully and legally and all that. But what I'm saying is I don't have the answers to such a grand question as that, how to beat the system. But in order to begin trying to figure it out or stand up for yourself, you would need to stop following charlatans, traitors, and Pied Pipers. That'd just be a necessary but not sufficient basic prerequisite. That's all I'm asking for. So yeah, unemployment. I've kind of mentioned some of those articles before. There's a story about Roderick O'Gorman was allegedly attacked, which is very sad. I don't think he was actually attacked badly or anything. I think he was just sort of casually. I think someone just came at him a little bit. He had Garda support with him and they intervened. So I don't think he was actually he was left badly shaken, but nothing actually really, he wasn't actually harmed as far as I'm aware. But so I mean, I could talk about that. He had a puff piece out yesterday about how afraid he is going around the place. I mean, I suppose probably should just not comment on that at all, to be honest. Maybe it's better. But I condemn any illegal activity and support democracy and all that. But I suppose if I were a politician like that and I was saying I'm getting dogs abuse left, right, and center everywhere I go, perhaps a question might arise in one's mind as to why that is. But I don't know. I mean, I will say, if ever there was a man, I don't believe that these politicians are the culprits, really. They're just, to quote Micheál Frain, whatever his name is, they're mouthpieces. They're not actually, they don't really have much agency, whether it's Simon Harris or Helen McEntee or whatever. They're all just glorified HR people or whatever, right? But if ever there was one of them who has a really nasty record, and I promote peace and dialogue and all that, so unrelated to, it's very sad that he ran into a bit of trouble there or whatever. But that aside, just as a political commentary on Roderick O'Gorman, if ever there was a man who had a nasty record, right? Because they've all done something. Radker was bad, and this person was bad, and Enda Kenny was bad, or whatever. But this guy is the minister. It's like they created a ministry of all the bad things. Children and youth, integration, and all of that. So basically, all of the transgendery kind of stuff with kids, propagandizing kids, various LGBT weird stuff like that, smutty books for kids and all that in the library, whatever. Plus the replacement agenda of replacing the Irish people, basically. That's his portfolio. He's got all that on him, on his name, which is just mad to think about, But yeah, it's I don't know. I wonder what's going on inside his head. Does he just have contempt or whatever? Because obviously a normal person, if they were in his shoes, would say statistically, the vast majority of the country don't want any more immigration. Like, depending on the poll, it's 80-90% of people, whatever. And I'm doing more and more and more of it in the most outlandish ways possible. I'm not just having immigrants come in and putting them up in hotels, putting them in military barracks and forcing it. I'm in effect behind people in Coolock and all that getting attacked, Newtown, Mount Kennedy. I'm militarily enforcing a policy that the vast majority of my country desperately oppose. And that's just the migration stuff. That's before you even get to the stuff with kids and transgenders and schools and all that. Then he's all on the side. Then he's also doing that. It's like, talk about not a great way to make friends, we'll say, I suppose, and a way to maybe foster contempt. Now, at the same time, I condemn any illegal activity, and so we all wish him well after his what he's shaken or whatever, after his issue there he had. But then, you know, he's going to doorsteps and people are coming at him, and then he's on the street and people are like shouting at him. It must take a really vile individual to basically know that everyone hates him and to double down on the policies and then act the victim for the abuse that he gets as a consequence of his own policies, which the majority of people oppose. You know, like, but that's not me justifying what may or may not have happened to him. I'm just giving a political commentary on what I feel about his policies. That's in no way justifying any sort of criminal or untoward acts whatsoever, etc. But yeah, it's just mad. You know, I look at his face and it just stirs up something in me, a kind of a desire to have a robust debate, and to cast my vote for a different party and stuff like that. I just feel that very strongly when I see his face. You know, there must be hardcore sort of antisocial, vindictive tendencies behind that psychology, anti-human basically, and an obsession with probably self-advancement, power, and a desire to rule over and tyrannize a majority from your perch, with glee. That's the impression I get, but I'm no psychologist. So anyway, I think there's another super chat there. I'll just read that and then head off for the night. So Tom Gent gives 5 and says, good to know the NGO feckers are in the chat. Good work, Earl. That's winning. I didn't know the NGOs were in the chat. I'm glad. I don't know if I have mods. I don't know, do I care? But God bless them. God bless them. Yeah, I don't really care. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. Yeah, that's Ballaghaderreen anyway. You know, like, it's kind of like, the thing is with Phil or with me or anything like that, it's kind of like if they want to bury their heads in the sand and follow these Pied Pipers and just sort of end up, because I'll just reiterate one more time and then I'll let it go, is that they could say, well, Newtown Mount Kennedy got steamrolled anyway by the guards, pepper sprayed and all that. But again, it's like, well, yeah, but Newtown Mount Kennedy have each other. They have really rallied around each other on this issue. In effect, I'm not from there, but I bet at this point it's almost like the unifying principle of the community of Newtown Mount Kennedy. Like, the community of Newtown Mount Kennedy is openly anti this plantation center and not saying, oh, well, we don't have enough bicycle lanes for the migrants and, oh, it's not fair on the migrants. They're not doing that bullshit. They're standing up for themselves openly and saying, we don't want this plantation in our town. And it is connected to all this stuff that's going on in the country. And we've been attacked by the guards. So we have a deep grievance with the state. And we know what it's about. We know what we're about. And we're not being led. We're not donkeys being led by snakes or whatever. We're not. We know what's going on. And anybody who's going to represent us is, like we see with Rob Carey and others, Snell as well, some decent people there, and they're just not subverted. They're not, and that has lots of intangible values, and in the future it could have very tangible values where they're not going to, the people in the plantation center are not going to have the better of the people in that town, because the people in the town know how to stand up for themselves as a unit, and they're connected to nationalists, the likes of Phil and others, take your pick, and they're connected to the international scene. All eyes internationally are on Newtown Mount Kennedy and have seen it. And so they've basically embraced their own side. They've taken their own side. They've taken their own position in spite of the blowback, in spite of the guards, and that has an inherent value to it. Whereas Ballaghaderreen or places like that, and Roscrea as well is another one, to be honest, because they really let that slip, where they've just kind of gone back into obscurity. Like Newtown Mount Kennedy has not gone back into obscurity. They are very active. They have real activists among them and stuff like that. Whereas Roscrea, they have some good people there for sure, but because of the way it was politically managed by these schemers, it's sort of just gone back into obscurity. And if you walk up and down the street of Roscrea, it's all foreign young men, unvetted illegal men or whatever. And it's not a great scene, to be honest, in Roscrea. It's a very bad vibe in that town, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It was all presided over by the same political schemers who ran the opposition when the, what was it called, Racket Hall was planted, and now it's just gone. Sure, the Lowrys and Shane Lee are back elected, and that's it. And they're not allowed to talk to nationalists, apparently, because that's very bad. You're not allowed to do that, and you're not allowed to say it's about immigration, and you're not allowed to say anything. It's got nothing to do with anything, and we're grand, and we don't want to talk to any outsiders because our Pied Piper told us not to, and that's it. Up in smoke. Nothing comes from, no good thing came out of a bad thing. Nothing. You're just all bad thing on bad thing. No silver lining. No increased morale for the next day. Nothing like that. Just completely deflated. So that's just what will keep happening. If Ballaghaderreen want to kind of go that way, follow that, there'll just be more attacks. You'll go from 50% of the population to 30%, to 25%. And you'll all try to move out, but your properties will be devalued as well because nobody else wants them. And you'll have no guards and no doctors, and the seesaw will still not be there. And you'll have kept the outsiders out, and you'll have stuck together really strong with your candles and your petitions. So that's kind of how it is. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, lads. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to bed. I'll talk to you again soon. I'll get back streaming more now. Do a few bits and pieces. So see you soon. Thanks.